Hey guys, and welcome to another tutorial by Tutorial Grid. I am your host Cherokee, and in this tutorial we will be focusing on some cool stuff you can do with Trapcode Particular. We're going to be looking at a scene that we created, this really cool underwater scene where we've got some bullets flying through the water trying to hit our host here, who's underwater and being shot at apparently. But first, why don't you head on over to facebook.com/Avid Productions 479. Give us a like there. Also, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube for more awesome tutorials. Check us out at Twitter at twitter.com/tutorialgrid. And we have more tutorials on our avidproductions479.com website. This tutorial is actually in part by SiteGround. So make sure to get all your awesome web hosting needs at SiteGround. Price starting at around $3.99 for basic web hosting. They've got Joomla, WordPress, all that fun stuff. And this is also brought to you in part by the Black Mariachi. So yeah, that's where we're getting this footage from. So what we're going to be doing is this tutorial. So we've got bullets underwater. We're using Trapcode. We're using bullets. We're using footage. But it kind of looks like this. So we've got a bunch of bullets and stuff flying through the water, and they've got some resistance, which is really cool. So it looks as if it's in the water. But yeah, so we've got bullets. We've got the kind of particle flow to make it look as if there is like I guess water, or not water, air bubbles coming up from around it. It's cool. And yeah, we've got our scene here. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and create a composition. So go to composition, new composition, and we're just going to name this water tutorial. We'll do bullets in water. And I believe I'm going to start this at 1920 by 1080, not 4K. 23976 will work just fine. And I'll hit OK. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to import our footage. Now I'm in my film folder, so I'm going to keep rocking in there. So I'll just import my footage, which is this guy right here. Oh, in the water. So I'll just pop that over here onto my import footage section and wait for it to import. And go find it. There it is. GoPro underwater, which it's technically right there. Hey, look, it's Daniel. This is one of our assistants. I have not looked at this footage enough. That's awesome. Yeah, that's Daniel. We were all on a boat on the film. And yeah, I really should have looked at this footage before I did this tutorial. But hey, we're doing it. So that's Daniel making an awesome face. All right, so we're going to find the spot that we want to start this at. So we've got our footage aligned. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Layer, New, Solid. We're going to call this Bullet Trails. And it can be technically any color you want, but I like to choose black just because everything in After Effects basically starts with a black solid. All right, next we're going to do is we're going to type in Trapcode. No, we're not going to type in Trapcode. We're going to type in Particular. Particular. And there it is. And we're going to drag that down to our bullet trails layer. And now we have a really nice, pretty, thingy right here. We got our particles. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our emitter. And we're going to go to direction, and we're going to hit uniform, and we're going to go to directional. So now we can actually change the direction of where these particles are flowing. So we're going to rotate the particles based on our X, Y, and Z axis, more than likely. So we want to rotate this down. So let's go ahead and rotate this down with our x-axis and rotate it by 90 degrees, so negative 90. I'm going to rotate it with our y. Move that to about 51 degrees, okay? So now I've got my particles flowing in from the left going right, okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pump up my velocity to where particles are just spewing out everywhere. So that's just going to be too much. So in order to combat that, instead of having our particles at 100, we're going to actually bring them down to like 3. So 3 particles a second. And really, so we have a sniper shooting. So it's really going to be more like 2. So it's going to be like boom, 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 boom. So notice our particles are kind of going in randomly. So they shoot. So one's shooting at this direction. One is shooting in this type of direction. So they're kind of going on and off in different locations. And that's exactly what we want. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, now that we have that set up, is I'm going to take my position and position my particle right up here. So that way we don't see them flying in the middle of our scene. So they're going to be flying in right off screen. So now we have these particles flying in through the scene. Cool. Now, one thing I do kind of want to do is set this up to where they're not focused on just one part of this. I do want to focus it on to where we've got a little bit of Z depth. So I'm going to push this up, change my emitter type to box instead of point, and change my emitter size to about 140 or 200. That way, whenever we start doing some other adjustments later on in our tutorial, we don't have to go back and do this, which you can, but I'm just going to go ahead and set this up now. So now we've got our particles moving in, and technically there's Z space, so they're kind of shot in, so you just kind of see them shooting everywhere. So that's looking pretty good. So the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to set up how this particle moves through the water. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to our physics layer, hit the drop down arrow, make sure air is on, and we're going to hit our air down arrow, and we're going to turn up the air resistance. And we're just going to turn that up just a slight amount. We're talking like 0.1 or 2. You want it just ever so slightly. So the bullets, whenever they come in, and still I think that's just a little too much, they actually slow down the further they get into the water. So 0.2 is too much. So 0.1 should do just fine. So they're shooting in, and they're kind of floating in, and they've got resistance on them. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to change my spin amplitude. So they're going to kind of spin in based on the air resistance. So I'll kind of move that up just a little bit. And you can actually kind of move it as much as you want, but I just want it a little slight movement. So whenever it goes in, you can kind of see it moving around a little bit. So they're firing in at one side, and they've got the air resistance, and they're moving around. And that's pretty much exactly what we want. And we're going to kind of cut it from here. So we're going to go on to the next step. This particle system isn't done yet, but we're going to go ahead and move on. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into our auxiliary system, and we're going to set emit from off and go to continuously. And that's going to cause this awesome stream of colorful particles to move into our life. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn up our particles per second, because we just want like a crap ton of particles. We're also going to turn up the velocity. So our particles are going to spread out as soon as they hit the water. So I think about 150 works pretty good. And you can kind of mess around with the different settings based on, what works good for you. We're also going to change the size. Our water bubble, our air bubble particles aren't going to be this big. So we're going to change that probably around I'm going to put mine down to 2. So I'm just going to hit 2 and see what that looks like. We're also going to change the gravity. So the gravity is going to really be one of the biggest sellers of this effect, because we're actually working with air bubbles, so they need to be moving up. So as you can tell, our water bubbles are moving up. Now it's kind of hard to tell here, so let's go ahead and change the color. So where it says color over life, we're actually going to do color from main. So turn that all the way up, so we just have white particles. All right, so now let's take a look at it. So we've got our particles and they're flowing up, which looks pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to change their life. So notice they're kind of turning off. So we want to make sure that these are as long as our composition. So I'm going to just change from my life from 0.5 to just 5 seconds. That way I know for sure the particles are going to be there. So we've got the gravity. Now the gravity looks pretty fake and I don't like that. So I'm going to have to change it just a bit. So from 490, I'm going to change that to probably around 150, 180-ish. That's looking a little better. Maybe change my velocity just a bit, because that's quite a bit. All right, that's looking pretty good. Cool. All right, that looks good. And now the next thing that we're going to do is find a good point on in our scene to start messing with how our bubbles are going to react whenever they're in this water. So what we're going to do is we're going to twirl down our physics, and we're going to also turn up the air resistance by just so slightly that they're going to bubble out and bubble in. You know, they're going to have a little bit of resistance as soon as they're in the water. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to, because these trails are going to the right, so we want to make sure that our auxiliary particles are also kind of following our main particle. So we're going to turn up our inherent velocity to about 1. So that way, whenever they come in, they're kind of already moving with our particles. And you can mess around with this, but remember, every little change is going to do a lot of work for you. So you can change it up to about 2, maybe even 3. That actually looks pretty good. Cool. That I actually like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our randomness, and we're going to change the size because our bubbles aren't always going to be the exact same size. So we're going to turn up our random just a little bit. Now this you can kind of play around just if whatever looks good for you. So that's looking pretty good for me, about a 53. And we've got our bubbles moving up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have to add some turbulence. Now the turbulence is going to, we've got a lot of turbulence in our water, so it's going to be moving up in a really random fashion. So we definitely want to make sure that we've got a little bit more visual interest into our particles. Okay, so under our physics, we have our turbulence position. Now we kind of want to move this up just a bit, and that should change the way our particles look. So you can kind of see they're moving up in a different fashion, but they're a little bit fast, I think. So I want to change that a little bit. So again, subtle details do a lot of good. It's by me about 112, so it goes up. They're kind of moving up just a little bit. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, now that I've got my turbulence, and you can tweak these settings as you go to make it look a little bit better. But this is looking actually pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do, well, I don't like how little particles that I have. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to change how many auxiliary particles that are being emitted into my scene. So I'm definitely going to increase the amount of particles. I think that's going to look pretty good right there. Yeah, that's looking good. That's looking real good. Cool. Now, one thing, I don't think I have enough spin on some of these. So I'm going to kind of go back up in here and change my spin amplitude just a little bit. That way, whenever they hit the water, they're not just going in one direction the whole time. They're kind of, you know, spewing out a little bit. And you can kind of change this, and you can see, and you can change this as much as you want, but you can see that it's adding just a little bit of slight randomness. So I'm going to turn that up even more, just to give it more depth into our scene. That's looking pretty good. Because I don't want my bullets to fly into a straight line. And now that I've added that, I'm also going to change my resistance just a little bit. So I'm going to turn up my air resistance to 0.2 again. So as soon as they hit that water, there's going to be less or more resistance. I might want to do it even more. That's just not enough. Let's do 0.5. That's just a little much. All right, so let's do 0.3. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now that we've got that kind of trailed off, and that's looking pretty good, what we're going to do is we're going to change our front particle here into a bullet. Okay, so this is going to be, I mean, really, really simple. But you can download the project file at avidproductions479.com, and there should be a file there in our project for this particular scene. All right, so we'll just find it right up here, and that will be in our download package on the website. So we're just going to go ahead and pull this underneath our footage. Now you can kind of look at it, and what we want to do first is color correct because it's obviously not going to be this color whenever it's underwater. So first off, let's go ahead and go to curves and drag that down on top of our bullet here. And let's darken it up quite a bit. And we've got a lot of red, so we're going to take out that red because we are underwater. Let's add some blue. Take out more of that red. And bring up our green. All right, maybe less green there. All right, so that looks pretty good right there. All right, so we've got our bullet, and we'll just go ahead and move that down. And we'll take our bullet trails layer, and we'll go into our particular or our particle. Yeah, we'll go into particular and go to our particle layer here. And instead of particle type, sphere, we're going to change it into a sprite. And then we're going to hit our texture drop down. We're going to layer and that 7mm hunting bullet. Warning, your size is too big, yada, yada, yada. Doesn't matter. Just hit OK. Okay. So now we've got our bullets. So that kind of changed a lot of our parameters here. but we're going to mess with those here in just a second. So first off, our bullets are definitely there. So they're right there. So let's go ahead and make our bullets just a little bit bigger. So instead of 5, let's turn it up to maybe... Man, this is going a lot bigger. All right, let's do 8. I think should work just fine. Okay, that looks pretty good. Might be a little, well, yeah, it might be a little small, but I think it'd be all right. Yeah, it'll be all right. Well, it's 7 mm. Yeah, it'll be okay. All right, so we've got our bullets there, and it's looking good, but our bullets are shooting sideways, so they're shooting horizontally instead of in the direction of the motion of the particles. So what we're going to do is we need to turn on our motion for this particle. So we're going to go to our rotation here, hit the drop down. We're going to hit orient to motion, and from on we'll turn that, or from off we'll turn that on, and that's going to orient the motion of our particle layer to our bullets moving in the correct motion. Cool. So now, so I see what I did here. Okay, so yeah, I completely screwed that up. I screwed the pooch on this one. So now I have 1,000 bullets flying off in every single direction. So this bullet is emitting bullets. That's the most terrifying movie frame ever. Our bullets are emitting bullets. Oh, that was a fun mistake. Okay, cool. But that's very, very easily fixed. So we'll go down to our auxiliary system, and we'll go to type, and instead of same as main, we'll just hit that to sphere, and we're back to normal. Oh, that's so silly. Okay, also, now that I think about it, this, I forgot to pre-compose our footage here just a little bit. So what we're going to do for our bullets is, apparently you have to pre-compose this stuff. So delete that. Let's go ahead and go into our composition. So click this, go to layer, pre-compose, leave all attributes in bullets and water, and hit OK. Double click on our layer here. Whoops. And go over to the 7mm bullet ping, and we're just going to go ahead and drag our curves layer down on this, and now we're going to change it. So we're going to darken it up and just make those same changes. And if you want, you can copy those changes that we made and use those and just paste them on top of this. But I'll just go ahead and redo this one just so you can see what we do. All right, and I'm going to change the exposure on this as well. Turn that down a bit. Turn our, nope, not offset. Gamma up just a tad. Cool. Okay, so now let's go into our bullets and water scene, and that has completely changed our scene. Fantastic. And that's what we wanted to do. So excuse me, I kind of messed up on that. So we've got our bullets in the water. They're orienting to the motion of the water. They're flying around. So the next thing we want to do is we've got a lot of blur in this. So let's go ahead and turn on our motion blur, which is going to be this little checkbox right here. And we'll go ahead and turn on our motion blur on here. And that's going to give us quite a bit more flexibility on how this is going to look. So that's going to blur out our pixels quite a bit. And that's looking pretty good. I think I need more particles though. So I'm going to go back into my trails, and I'm going to turn up my particles in my auxiliary system. Turn those up. Maybe turn up the gravity just a little bit more, so maybe negative 190. And maybe turn up my turbulence a little bit more. It's all about messing with the effect to get it to how you like it. So I'm doing, this is pretty much the final addition that we're going to do too, until we just start really coloring, not coloring, but doing the final tweaks. Well, I mean, this is the final tweaks. So I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So we've got this, and I need to find my turbulence. Physics turbulence. All right. We'll just turn this up just a smidgen. About 137. That's looking pretty good. Cool. And you can mess with it as much as you want. Like, you can turn it up a bunch. Which if you do it a bunch, it's going to have a lot more weirdness to it. And it's going to move up like a bunch of flies. Which now I'm thinking my particles might be just a little too small. So I'm going to turn down my turbulence just a little bit. And I'm going to turn up my particles just a bit. Particle size, I'll just change it to 3. Or actually 2.5 should do it. Cool. And I'm going to change the opacity just a bit, because obviously these are going to be opaque. So it's going to be that. Cool. That's looking pretty good. Awesome. I'm liking this. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a camera. So we'll go to Layer, New, Camera, and hit OK. And this is going to be adding just a little bit. So that brings a little bit more depth into our scene. So we're going to hit our drop down arrow. We're going to go Camera Options, and we're going to turn on our depth of field. Make sure that did just enough. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is going to go to Aperture and hit 100. And we're going to change the blur level and really blur this out. So it makes it look as if a lot of these particles are zooming in our camera and out of our camera. So some are closer, some are further, and it's going to add a lot more depth into our scene here. And now the one thing that I'm noticing is I think our particles are just too white. Okay, so now that we have pretty much all of this stuff set up the way we should have it, is we're going to actually do something a little different. We're going to duplicate our bullet trails file. So we'll just hit Control D. And we're going to call this Bullet Trails. Let's go rename here. Bullet Trail Bullet. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off our auxiliary particle system. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and turn this off. And we'll turn it off completely. Okay. So now that is going to isolate now that we just have just the bullet. Okay. And now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our bullet trails, and we're going to just leave that the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn our from our particle back into a, we're actually just going to change our particle to completely opaque. So we'll take this and we'll change the opacity to 0. So now, whenever you turn this on, we can turn off our bullet trails and on the bullets. So they're going to be two completely separate entities now. So now that I'm noticing it, I don't like the fact that our bullets are so small. So I'm just going to make those a little bit bigger. So the size, I'll change it to like 12. Okay, that's going to work a little bit better. And also, now that we have this, I'm going to change the color of our particles here. So I'm going to go to saturation and go to color correction and change this back down to our bullet trails. So drag it down to bullet trails. And we're going to hit this button that says colorize. And we're going to saturate the hell out of it. Okay. So the reason why we're going to saturate it and then we're going to desaturate it, we're going to find the color that we want. So we want to match this color as much as we can. And I don't know why, but I just don't like doing it in the particle layer. So I like using a separate plugin, and that might just be me. But that's just the way I like to do it. So I'm going to find more of this bluish, greenish white, and I'm going to bring down my saturation a bit. Bluish, greenish, white. What am I thinking? All right. But I'm going to make it this blue lagoon look. Okay. And bring it down just a little bit more. And just color it just enough so it matches our footage fairly well. And that's looking really, really good. You can see the bullet trails are coming in, and they're looking really nice. And we've got depth. We've got everything looking really good. So yeah, that is that. Cool. Well, I think this is the end of our tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. We did these really cool things. We added the bullet trails. We added a bullet. We've got camera, depth of field, motion blur. Everything's looking good. Everything's reacting the way it should. All the bullets are moving in a certain way, and everything just looks good for the look that we're going for. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Make sure to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/avidproductions479, twitter.com/tutorialgrid. Make sure to check us out on the website, avidproductions479.com. Subscribe to this video. And also, we've got a new cool thing coming out. It's Tutorial Grid Live. We've been doing it for about a couple of weeks now, where we actually go in and we just live stream me working on the computer in VFX for the movie The Black Mariachi, which is coming to studios or coming to theaters in 2016. So The Black Mariachi, check it out. Also, make sure to check out SiteGround for all your awesome web hosting needs. Pricing starting at $3.99 right now. So make sure to check that out. Link in the description below. And guys, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. And